My name is Natalie Torres, and I'm 31 years old. I still remember the exact date, May 8th, 2023. It was a Monday, and Seattle was soaked in that kind of cold drizzle that just seeps into your bones. The kind of weather that makes you question why anyone chooses to live in the Pacific Northwest. I pulled my jacket tighter as I walked up Pine Street, passing the usual collection of coffee shops and tech bros heading to their open-plan offices. I arrived at Argonne Cloud Systems at 7:47 a.m., like I had every morning for the last 6 years. The building was one of those converted warehouses in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, trying too hard to look innovative. I badged in through the glass doors, nodding to Andre, our security guard who'd been there since day one. I was the lead back-end architect. Employee number 6, back when we were still working out of a cramped WeWork space, surviving on pizza and the delusion that we were changing the world. I had built 70% of the platform's core infrastructure, from scratch. The data sync nodes, the multi-region failovers, the real-time message queues that kept our clients' operations running 24/7. Without me, there was no product. But that day, I walked in already knowing it would be my last, and they had no idea what was coming. Before we dive into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We drop new videos every single day. Now, let's get back to the story. Let me take you back to the beginning, back when I still believed in the dream. It was March 2017, and I was 25 years old, fresh out of a soul-crushing job at Microsoft, where I spent 2 years optimizing database queries for Office 365. I was good at it, really good, but I felt like just another cog in a machine that was already running perfectly well without me. That's when I met Jake Morrison and Alex Chen at a tech meetup in Fremont. They had this wild idea. What if we could create a platform that would optimize logistics for fleet companies and warehouse networks? The kind of back-end infrastructure that no one thinks about unless it breaks. But when it does, entire supply chains collapse. Think about it, Natalie, Jake said, his eyes bright with that particular brand of startup fever. FedEx, UPS, every trucking company in America, they're all running on systems built in the 90s. We could revolutionize how freight moves across the country. Alex nodded enthusiastically. We're talking about real-time tracking, predictive maintenance, route optimization using machine learning. The whole 9 yards. I was skeptical at first. Every tech bro in Seattle thinks they're going to disrupt logistics. But as they laid out their vision, I saw the technical challenges that would make this interesting. This wasn't just another app. This was enterprise-grade infrastructure that would need to handle millions of data points per second, with zero downtime tolerance. We need someone who can build this from the ground up, Jake continued. Someone who understands distributed systems, can architect for scale, and won't compromise on reliability. That someone was me. I quit Microsoft the next week. Those first 2 years were intoxicating. We rented a tiny office above a Vietnamese restaurant on Capitol Hill, and I set up my workstation next to a window that looked out over the Space Needle. The smell of pho would drift up through the floorboards, and we'd work until 2 a.m., fueled by caffeine and the absolute certainty that we were building something revolutionary. I architected the entire platform from scratch. The core was a distributed message queue system that could handle real-time data from thousands of trucks, forklifts, and warehouse sensors simultaneously. I built redundant failover systems across 3 AWS regions, implemented end-to-end encryption, and created a monitoring dashboard that could predict system failures before they happened. The breakthrough came in late 2018 when we signed our first major client. FleetNet IQ, a logistics company that managed freight operations for everyone from Amazon to local grocery chains. They had 2,000-plus operations teams across the country, all relying on real-time visibility into their supply chain. If your system goes down, our entire dashboard goes blind. Their CTO, Sandra Williams, told me during the contract negotiation. We're talking about millions of dollars in delayed shipments, spoiled food, missed deliveries. This isn't just software, this is critical infrastructure. No pressure, right? But we delivered. The platform launched in January 2019, and it was rock solid. FleetNet IQ's operations teams could track every truck in their network in real time, predict maintenance issues before they caused breakdowns, and optimize routes based on traffic, weather, and fuel costs. We were small, tight-knit. Everyone pulled their weight. Jake handled business development, Alex managed the front-end team, and I owned everything that happened behind the scenes. We had a culture of mutual respect, shared ownership, and genuine care for the product we were building. That changed when the board hired Tracy Lang as CEO in late 2022. I should explain how we got to the point where a board could hire a CEO over the founder's objections. Because you're probably wondering how Jake, Alex, and I, the three people who actually built the company, ended up being employees rather than the people calling the shots. The short answer is, we got diluted. When we started in 2017, the three of us split the equity fairly evenly. I had 35% as the lead architect, Jake had 33% as the business guy, and Alex had 32% as the product lead. We were naive enough to think that would never change. But building enterprise software is expensive, really expensive. By 2018, we needed serious capital to compete with established players like Oracle and SAP. We raised a $2 million seed round, giving up 20% of the company to a venture capital firm called Meridian Partners. That brought us down to about 28% each, but we still had majority control as founders. We told ourselves we'd be more careful with the next round. Then FleetNet IQ happened. Landing that contract was amazing, but scaling to meet their demands required infrastructure we couldn't afford. We needed better servers, more engineers, enterprise-grade security certifications. In 2019, we raised a $8 million Series A, giving up another 25% to Meridian and bringing in a new investor, Cascade Ventures. Suddenly, we were down to about 21% each. The math was starting to get uncomfortable. The Series B came in 2021, $20 million to fuel expansion and hire a sales team. By then, we each owned roughly 15% of the company we'd founded. The investors had 55% combined, and the remaining 15% was reserved for employee stock options. That's when the board dynamics shifted. Series A, 4 to 5 board members, 2 founders, 1 seed investor, 1 Series A venture capitalist investor, and possibly 1 independent director had become reality for us. Jake was CEO and board chair, Alex and I were board members, but we were outnumbered by 2 investor representatives and an independent director who somehow always seemed to agree with whatever the VCs wanted. The investors started making noise about professionalizing the management team. They wanted someone with enterprise sales experience and proven leadership at scale. Someone who could take us from a $30 million company to a $100 million company to a $1 billion exit. They made it clear that Jake could either step aside voluntarily or be voted out. Alex and I couldn't stop it. We simply didn't have the votes. That's how Tracy Lang became CEO, and how Jake and Alex became employees reporting to someone who'd never written a line of code or closed a deal in our industry. As for me, I was just a senior engineer with a fancy title and a shrinking stake in the company I'd built. Tracy Lang had the kind of resume that made venture capitalists weak in the knees. Harvard MBA, 3 successful exits, a speaking circuit regular who could pitch anything to anyone. She had perfectly styled blonde hair, wore designer suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and spoke in corporate buzzwords that meant nothing and everything at the same time. The board brought her in to professionalize operations, translation, make the company look good for acquisition. We were profitable, growing steadily, and had a product that actually worked. But that wasn't enough for the investors. They wanted hockey stick growth, enterprise sales, and a CEO who could schmooze with Fortune 500 executives. Jake and Alex were pushed into Chief Technology Officer and Chief Product Officer roles respectively, which sounded impressive but meant they reported to Lang now. I remained lead backend architect, but suddenly I was having to justify every technical decision to someone who thought serverless was a restaurant concept. Our first conflict came 3 weeks after she started. "Natalie, I need you to walk me through the deployment pipeline," Lang said during a one-on-one meeting in her glass-walled office. She'd redecorated the space with motivational posters and a whiteboard covered in sales metrics. I spent 30 minutes explaining our continuous integration system, our staging environments, our rollback procedures. I showed her how we could deploy new features without any downtime, how we monitored system performance in real time, how we maintained 99.97% uptime across all our services. She nodded along, occasionally asking questions that revealed she had no idea what I was talking about. "This is all very impressive," she said finally, "but I'm concerned about our velocity. Our competitors are shipping features weekly, and we're still on a monthly release cycle." "We're not on a monthly release cycle," I corrected. "We deploy multiple times per week. But we don't ship half-baked features just to hit arbitrary deadlines. Our clients depend on system stability." "I understand that," Lang said, her tone shifting slightly. "But we need to be more agile, more responsive to market demands. I'm bringing in some consultants to help optimize our processes." That's when I knew we were in trouble. The consultants were from McKinsey, because of course they were. 3 20-somethings in identical Navy suits, who had never written a line of code in their lives, but had very strong opinions about digital transformation and lean methodologies. They spent 2 weeks interviewing everyone on the team, sitting in on our engineering stand-ups, and producing PowerPoint presentations with names like optimizing development velocity through process innovation. Their recommendations were predictably disastrous. Eliminate code reviews to speed up deployment, reduce testing phases to ship faster, and implement continuous deployment, without understanding what that actually meant. "With all due respect," I said during the presentation, "these changes would compromise system reliability. We're not building a social media app here. If our platform goes down, trucks stop moving, warehouses shut down, and millions of dollars in commerce grind to a halt." One of the consultants, a kid named Brad who couldn't have been older than 24, smirked. "I think you're being a bit dramatic, Natalie. Amazon deploys thousands of times per day. Netflix pushes code constantly. There's no reason a logistics platform can't do the same." "Amazon and Netflix have thousands of engineers and massive redundancy built into their systems," I replied. "We have 12 developers and clients who can't afford even 5 minutes of downtime." Lang jumped in before I could continue. "I appreciate your concerns, Natalie, but we need to trust the process. These consultants have helped dozens of companies scale their engineering organizations." That's when I realized I was fighting a losing battle. It was around this time that I started spending more time with Mara, our UX lead. She joined the company 6 months before Lang arrived, and I'd been impressed by her thoughtful approach to interface design. Where most UX designers focused on making things look pretty, Mara understood the cognitive load of our users. Operations managers who were monitoring hundreds of vehicles while making split-second decisions about route changes and resource allocation. She designed interfaces that were functional, intuitive, and incredibly effective. Truck drivers could update their status with a single tap. Warehouse managers could spot bottlenecks instantly. Operations teams could coordinate across time zones without confusion. But she was also funny, grounded, and had this way of cutting through corporate bullshit that I found refreshing. We started getting coffee together, then lunch, venting about the changes happening at the company. Nothing dramatic, just 2 colleagues who shared a mutual frustration with the direction the company was heading. "You know what I love about engineering," Mara said one afternoon as we grabbed coffee near the office. "It's honest. Either the code works or it doesn't. Either the system is reliable or it isn't. There's no ambiguity." "That's what I used to love about this job," I replied. "But now everything's about perception, not reality. We're optimizing for investor presentations instead of user experience." "Lang doesn't understand what we actually do," Mara said. "She sees the platform as a product to be sold, not a service to be maintained." That conversation happened in February 2023, and it was the moment I realized I had found an ally in someone who understood the technical and ethical challenges we were facing. We kept our concerns mostly between ourselves. We were both private people, and office politics were complicated enough without adding fuel to the fire. After the McKinsey consultants left, Lang became more aggressive about changing our engineering processes. She brought in Derek Sullivan, some ex-Google contractor who'd spent 3 years working on Google Photos before getting laid off in a restructuring. He was supposed to transition me out by taking over the backend architecture. The problem was, Derek barely understood our deployment logic. He'd spent his career working on consumer applications with millions of users, but soft failure modes. Our platform was the opposite, fewer users, but every failure was catastrophic. "Why do we need 3-region failover?" Derek asked during his first week. "Couldn't we just run everything in US West 2 and save on infrastructure costs?" "Because when an earthquake hits Seattle, our clients in Chicago and Atlanta still need their systems to work," I explained. "We're not serving cat videos. We're managing critical supply chain infrastructure." Derek nodded, but I could tell he didn't really get it. He was used to systems where 99.9% uptime was acceptable, where you could push a buggy feature and fix it in production, where users would tolerate glitches in exchange for new functionality. That's when I made the decision that would define everything that followed. I spent the next month quietly implementing what I called the master orchestration layer, an invisible upgrade that no one else on the team noticed. It was an elegant piece of code that served as the central nervous system for our entire platform, coordinating communication between our microservices, managing database connections, and ensuring data consistency across all our regional deployments. The key innovation was the authentication system. Instead of using our standard service-to-service authentication, I implemented a rotating cryptographic key system that required validation from a secure key vault. The vault was hosted on my personal AWS account, under a developer license that I'd been paying for out of pocket since the early days, when the company was too cash-strapped to afford proper infrastructure. The system was designed to be resilient and self-healing. If the key vault became unavailable, the platform would continue operating in a degraded mode for exactly 10 minutes, long enough for any reasonable outage to be resolved. After that, it would lock into a read-only state to prevent data corruption. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't illegal. It was just undocumented. The breaking point came in late April, when Lang pushed for an aggressive deployment schedule that would have us shipping untested code to production every week. She'd found a new client, a Fortune 500 retailer who wanted to pilot our platform for their holiday shipping operations. "We need to move fast on this," Lang announced during an all-hands meeting. "They want to see weekly feature updates, real-time customization, and seamless integration with their existing systems." "Their existing systems are a mess," I said. "We'd need at least 3 months of careful integration work to ensure compatibility." "We don't have 3 months," Lang replied. "We have 6 weeks. I need you to make it work." "I'm not going to compromise system stability for a sales demo," I said. The room went quiet. Everyone knew this was the conversation we'd been building toward for months. "Natalie," Lang said, her voice taking on that dangerous, calm tone, "I need you to understand something. This company is bigger than any one person, including you." "And I need you to understand something," I replied. "This platform is more complex than you realize. You can't just push code to production and hope for the best. Our clients depend on us. Then maybe you're not the right person for this role anymore." That's when I knew my time was up. Fast forward Monday, May 8, 2023, 8:45 a.m. All hands meeting in the main conference room. I sat in the back, watching Lang set up her laptop at the front of the room. She was wearing a navy blazer and had that particular smile that meant someone was about to get fired. The entire company was there, about 30 people crammed into a space designed for 20. Developers, designers, sales reps, customer success managers. Some of them had been with the company since the beginning. Others were new hires who joined in the last year as we scaled up. "Good morning, everyone," Lang began. "I want to talk about our next phase of growth. We've built something incredible here, but growth requires change. It requires making difficult decisions about our team composition." I felt my heart rate increase. This was it. "Unfortunately, that means saying goodbye to one of our early contributors," she continued. "Someone who helped build our foundation but may not be the right fit for our future." She turned to look directly at me. "Natalie, I want to thank you for everything you've done for Argonne. Your technical contributions have been significant, but we're moving in a new direction, and we need team members who can embrace change and collaborate effectively." The room was dead silent. A few people looked shocked. Derek was trying to hide a smirk. Effective immediately, your employment with Argonne Cloud Systems is terminated. I stood up slowly, feeling oddly calm. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud still felt surreal. 6 years of my life, hundreds of late nights, thousands of lines of code, reduced to a corporate euphemism about team composition. I walked to the front of the room, where Lang was standing with a satisfied expression. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my security badge, the one I'd carried every day since employee number 6. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, handing her the badge. Then I looked her straight in the eye and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I suggest you call your clients and explain why the entire platform is about to go offline." In exactly 10 minutes. The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps, nervous laughter, someone muttering, "Oh shit," under their breath. Lang's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, anger, then something that might have been fear. "Very dramatic, Natalie," she said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "I'm sure Derek can handle any transitions." Derek was already pulling out his laptop, suddenly looking less cocky. I didn't respond. I just walked out of the conference room, through the open office space, past the reception desk where Andre was pretending not to listen, and out the front door. The cold Seattle air hit my face, and I took a deep breath. It was 9:03 a.m., and I was unemployed for the first time in 6 years. I walked down Pine Street to my favorite coffee shop, a little place called Victrola that had been my refuge during stressful deployment weeks. I ordered a cortado and found a seat by the window, pulling out my phone to watch the show. At 9:07 a.m., the first alert hit. I had monitoring dashboards on my personal phone that tracked system health across all our services. I watched as the first warning appeared. Authentication service degraded, failover mode activated. Back at the office, I imagined Derek frantically trying to understand what was happening. The system was still running, but it was operating in the degraded mode I'd programmed as a safety buffer. All the core services were functional, but new deployments were blocked, and some advanced features were disabled. At 9:10 a.m., the second alert. Database connection pool exhausted, read-only mode initiated. At 9:12 a.m., the third. Service orchestration failure, manual intervention required. And at 9:13 a.m., exactly 10 minutes after I'd walked out the door, the master orchestration layer activated its failsafe protocol. The platform locked. My phone started buzzing immediately, first with monitoring alerts, then with phone calls. Jake, Alex, Derek, even Lang herself. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened Slack on my phone and watched the chaos unfold in real time. Our internal channels were exploding with messages from Derek, Alex, Jake, and Lang, all of them panicking. Derek was frantically posting about authentication failures and deployment errors, his messages getting increasingly desperate as he realized he couldn't understand the system architecture. Alex was demanding explanations for problems he'd never seen before. Jake was trying to coordinate a response while clearly having no idea what was actually broken. And Lang was doing what she did best, demanding immediate solutions to problems she didn't understand, her messages getting shorter and more aggressive as the minutes ticked by. The panic was palpable, even through a phone screen. These were the same people who had just watched me get fired for not being collaborative enough, and now they were discovering exactly how collaborative I'd actually been. Every line of code I'd written, every system I'd architected, every late night I'd spent making sure their platform stayed online. It was all suddenly, painfully visible in its absence. That's when I got my first direct message from Derek. "Hey, I think something went wrong with the deployment. Can we talk?" I finished my cortado and didn't respond. At 9:25 a.m., our biggest client noticed. Sandra Williams from FleetNet IQ sent an automated alert through our customer support system. Platform unresponsive, escalation required. Within minutes, the support tickets were pouring in. Warehouse managers couldn't update inventory. Truck drivers couldn't report their locations. Operations teams couldn't coordinate shipments. The platform that I'd built to be resilient and self-healing was doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting data integrity by preventing potentially corrupted writes to the database. But from the outside, it looked like a complete system failure. By 10 o'clock a.m., Lang was in full crisis mode. She'd pulled the entire engineering team into an emergency meeting, trying to understand what had happened and how to fix it. The problem was, nobody else on the team understood the master orchestration layer. It wasn't documented in our standard architecture diagrams because it had been my personal project, implemented gradually over months of late-night coding sessions. Derek was flailing. He'd spent the last week trying to understand our deployment pipeline, but he'd focused on the visible infrastructure, the web servers, the databases, the load balancers. He had no idea that there was an invisible coordination layer managing everything behind the scenes. The key vault is hosted on an external AWS account, he reported during the emergency meeting. I can see the authentication calls in the logs, but I don't have access to the vault itself. Whose account? Lang demanded. I think it's Natalie's personal account. The silence in the room must have been deafening. At 10:30 a.m., Lang called me directly. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Natalie, I know we had our differences, but this is bigger than personal conflicts. We have clients depending on us. Please call me back so we can resolve this professionally. I deleted the message. At 11 o'clock a.m., Jake called. We'd been friends for 6 years, and I actually felt bad about ignoring him. But I knew what the conversation would be like. He'd try to convince me that this was about the team, about the company we'd built together, about letting personal feelings interfere with professional responsibilities. At 11:30 a.m., the legal threat started. Lang sent me an email with the subject line, urgent, platform recovery required. The message was formal, clearly written by the company's lawyers, demanding that I provide immediate technical assistance to restore normal operations and warning of potential legal consequences for intentional sabotage. I replied with a single sentence. I didn't delete anything or corrupt anything. I simply removed access to infrastructure that was never owned by Argonne Cloud Systems. Which was true. The key vault was hosted on my personal AWS account, under a developer license that I'd been paying for since 2017. The company had never reimbursed me for the cost, never asked me to transfer ownership, never even acknowledged that it existed. From a legal standpoint, I was just terminating a service that I'd been providing for free. The most satisfying moment came at 2:00 p.m. when Mara posted in the company's public Slack channel. After careful consideration, I've decided to submit my resignation, effective immediately. When leadership becomes a threat to the people it's supposed to protect, silence is not professionalism, it's complicity. She didn't mention me by name. She didn't need to. Everyone knew what she was talking about. Lang was hemorrhaging talent at the worst possible time. I called Mara that evening. She was at her apartment in Ballard, packing up her work laptop and removing personal files from company accounts. I couldn't stay, she said when I asked why she'd made such a public exit. Not after what she did to you, and not after watching her try to solve a technical problem with legal threats. You didn't have to quit, I said. I don't want you to sacrifice your career because of what happened to me. This isn't about you, Mara replied. It's about working for people who respect expertise instead of trying to intimidate it into submission. That conversation got me thinking about what came next. I spent the next 3 months designing a new platform from scratch. Not just an improved version of what I'd built at Argonne, but a complete reimagining of how logistics software should work. I called it SignalCraft. The core innovation was a distributed architecture that eliminated single points of failure. Instead of relying on centralized orchestration, each service was designed to operate independently while maintaining data consistency through a novel consensus protocol. I also implemented true multi-tenant architecture, allowing multiple clients to share infrastructure while maintaining complete data isolation. And I built in automated scaling, so the platform could handle traffic spikes without human intervention. But the real difference was philosophical. Where Argonne had been built for growth and acquisition, SignalCraft was built for reliability and longevity. Mara reached out in July, asking if I needed help with user experience design. She'd been freelancing since leaving Argonne, working with a few smaller logistics companies, but she was interested in something more substantial. I know you understand how operations teams actually work, I said during our coffee meeting. Would you be interested in designing interfaces that are intuitive without being simplistic, powerful without being overwhelming? she smiled. That sounds like exactly what I want to be working on. We partnered up, working out of a small office in Georgetown. No complications, no office drama, just two professionals who respected each other's expertise and shared a conviction that we could build something better than what we'd left behind. The first client call came in September. Sandra Williams from FleetNet IQ had found us through word of mouth. Apparently, our former colleagues at Argonne had been quietly recommending Signalcraft to clients who were frustrated with platform instability. "I'm interested in what you've built," Sandra said during our initial conversation, "but I need to know it's not going to disappear on me like the last platform did." "What happened with Argonne?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They've been struggling with reliability issues since May. System outages, data inconsistencies, support tickets that go unanswered for days. We're looking for alternatives." I scheduled a demo for the following week. Walking into FleetNet IQ's offices in Bellevue, I felt a familiar nervousness. This was the client that had defined Argonne's success, and their approval would either validate Signalcraft or confirm that I'd been foolish to start over. The presentation went perfectly. Mara walked them through the user interface, showing how operations managers could get real-time visibility into their entire supply chain. I demonstrated the technical architecture, explaining how the distributed design eliminated the failure modes that had plagued their previous platform. "This is exactly what we need," Sandra said at the end of the presentation. "When can we start the migration?" 6 months after being fired from Argonne, I was signing a contract with their biggest client. Lang was forced out of Argonne in November 2023, though the official announcement framed it as pursuing new opportunities in the venture capital space. The company brought in a new CEO, a former CTO from a logistics startup who actually understood the technical challenges they were facing. They spent months trying to rebuild the platform's reliability, but the damage was done. FleetNet IQ had been their anchor client, and their departure triggered a cascade of contract cancellations and service downgrades. Argonne still exists, but it's a shadow of what it could have been. They've pivoted to serving smaller clients with less demanding requirements, and their engineering team has been through 3 complete reorganizations in the past year. Derek left the company in January, taking a job at a consumer gaming startup where system reliability was less critical. Jake and Alex are still there, trying to rebuild the culture and technical excellence that made the company special in the first place. I don't harbor any resentment toward them. They were caught in an impossible situation, trying to balance investor pressure with technical reality. But I also don't regret the choice I made. Lang. She disappeared from the Seattle tech scene entirely. Her LinkedIn profile lists her as an independent consultant, but I haven't seen any evidence of actual clients or projects. The NDA she signed, as part of her severance package, apparently prevents her from discussing her time at Argonne. But you're probably wondering what happened to my shares in Argonne. After all, I still owned 15% of a company that had been valued at $50 million during the Series B round. That should have been worth $7.5 million, right? Well, that's where the ugly reality of startup equity comes in. When a company struggles, the last investors in get paid first. Cascade Ventures, who led the Series B, had liquidation preferences that meant they'd get their $20 million back before anyone else saw a penny. Meridian Partners had similar rights for their $8 million. With clients leaving and revenue declining, Argonne's valuation plummeted. The company eventually sold to a larger logistics software company for $35 million in early 2024, less than the total amount of investment capital that had been put in. After the investors took their preferential payments, there was about $17 million remaining for common shareholders. Jake and Alex, who'd stayed with the company through the transition and helped rebuild some stability, each received around $2.5 million for their shares. Not the life-changing money they'd hoped for after 6 years, but enough to give them some financial security and options for their next ventures. As for me, since I'd been terminated for cause, according to the company's official records, my equity was subject to forfeiture clauses in the shareholder agreement. The lawyers made a case that my actions on May 8th constituted a breach of my fiduciary duty to the company. My 15% stake in a company I'd helped build for 6 years was worth exactly $0. It's a harsh lesson about the difference between owning equity and owning control, and about reading the fine print in shareholder agreements. Jake and Alex had learned to navigate the corporate politics well enough to survive the transition. I'd chosen principle over politics and paid the price for it. As for me and Mara, we've built something that we're proud of. Signalcraft now serves 12 clients across the country, processing millions of data points per day with 99.99% uptime. We've grown the team to 8 people, all of whom understand that reliability isn't just a technical requirement. It's a moral obligation to the clients who depend on us. We still work out of that small office in Georgetown, though we've expanded to include a second conference room and a kitchen with a proper espresso machine. The walls are covered with architecture diagrams and user journey maps, not motivational posters. And every morning, when I walk into the office and see the system monitoring dashboards showing green lights across all our services, I remember that moment when I stood in front of the Argonne all-hands meeting and said, "You've got 10 minutes." Sometimes, karma isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes it just waits, exactly 10 minutes. Then it builds something better, but I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked for a boss who didn't understand the value of what you brought to the table? Someone who thought they could replace expertise with attitude? Or maybe you've been in a situation where you had to choose between staying quiet and standing up for what's right, even when it meant risking everything. Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.